Hello there. What is going on, everybody? Today we're doing another Armada ship breakdown, and it's the first ship we're breaking down in 2022 of the Imperial Navy, and it's the Victory class Star Destroyer. This thing is beautiful, and a lot of people aren't super crazy about it, but I'm going to talk to you about all of the ship varieties of it, the different titles, some sample builds, and I'll tell you why I actually really like this ship and why it has a special place in my heart. If you guys are new here to the channel, we are still giving away a lightsaber. All you have to do is be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. I want to hear what you think of the Victory Star Destroyer. Did you get your first one when you were playing? How do you like to run them, or have you given up on it altogether? Also, check the links down in the video description below. And while you're here, like the video, share the video, let me know what you think, and join our Discord. I'd love to have you. If you are new to Star Wars Armada or learning more about tabletop gaming in general, our Discord is a great place for you to join our community and become part of the community. Ask questions, share some of your fleet build ideas, photos. We have a painting contest going on right now for red paint jobs, or paint jobs featuring the color red. Check out the Discord, though. It's a great place to get in touch and interface with more like-minded gamers. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the Victory Star Destroyer. Again, it comes in the core set. It is also available as a standalone expansion. You have the Victory 1 and the Victory 2. Victory 2 being significantly more expensive at 85 points compared to 73 for the Victory 1. The main difference between these two ships is that they are black and blue dice respective, but as far as their similarities, well, they have a lot in common. They're virtually the same ship. This ship boasts 8 hull, 3 shields on the front, 3 shields on the side, but its weak spot is its rear with only 1 shield on the rear. It's a 3-command ship, which basically means it's going to be, in many ways, handling much like a large ship. It only has speeds 1 and 2 available to it. It has only 1 yaw available at each speed, only 1 at 1 and 1 on the second click at speed 2, which makes it not very maneuverable at all. Defensively, though, it does feature a brace and 2 redirect tokens to help take advantage of its well-shielded sides. It can activate 3 squadrons, and it has 4 engineering available to it. It's definitely its strongest zone is its front hull zone, which in both versions features 6 dice, with its sides being a little bit weaker and its relatively weak rear side as well. And both versions of this ship feature only 1 anti-squadron die. The ship is definitely front-centric. It has a wider front arc. It definitely wants to have enemies in its front arc. However, it has also a fairly wide and kind of weaker rear side. So while it can definitely have some teeth if it gets you in the front arc, if you're able to get behind this thing, which isn't hard to do considering how low of a maneuverability factor it has, it's going to take some punishment if it gets enemies in its rear. Now, its side arcs are fairly small, and it doesn't always have the best chance to double arc, especially with its lack of maneuverability, which I've already said like 4 or 5 times. But definitely, it for its price point, it still can potentially hit hard, but it's not always the easiest thing to do. This was the first kind of Star Destroyer-like ship we had in Star Wars Armada, so at first I think people thought, well, this is just how the Empire is going to roll. They're going to have big front arcs, which most of them tend to, or at least a lot of the heavy hitters tend to. And I think it's really been outclassed and outshined by a lot of other ships that have come before it, and it pretty much suffers from beginner syndrome, in that it was the first ship in the core box. It was the first ship we all got. I remember I bought 3 core sets when it first came out because I wanted to have bigger fleets, and it was the only thing available. So I have had a lot of time with the Victory Star Destroyer, and I used to not like it all that much. Not gonna lie to you, I used to not like it very much, but it's come a long way. There's a lot of new upgrades available for it, and it really help it to do a great job. So looking at these 2 versions of the Victory Star Destroyer, our Victory 1 is our black dice version. What that means is, in addition to having 3 red dice in the front and 2 red on the sides, it also has 3 black dice and an extra black on the sides. This is our close range Star Destroyer. This is the one that wants to get up close and personal, and if it can wreak some havoc on you, because 6 dice is a lot, especially when you've got 3 blacks. That's a potential of 12 damage out of the front. just on a basic roll. Now, granted, you're not going to get 12. You're not going to roll doubles on every single die there. But you have a pretty good chance of getting over 8, and so that's always a nice thing. Now, for upgrades, we have Officer, Weapons Team, Offensive Retrofit. We have the Ordnance upgrade slot, which you tend to get with a lot of black dice ships, and of course the Turbo Laser, which you tend to get with a lot of red dice ships. This does allow for this ship to be very offensively outfitted and to be built for black dice delivery and black dice critical effects, which was a very common mainstay in the early days of Armada. This was a very common screed platform. He was Victory 1s and Gladiators were the very, very prevalent in the early days of Star Wars Armada, and a ship with as many black dice as this one was able to dish out a lot of pain. To bring the points up a little bit to the Victory 2, we only see, really blue dice changes here. We have one upgrade that changes, and it's the Ordnance upgrade gets swapped out for an Ion Cannon upgrade. And that's really the only difference, along with the dice changing from black to blue in our front and side arcs. So this is just your your long distance version. So if you're running multiple victories, or you're trying to figure out which one you want to use, if you're looking to make this one more survivable, this one tends to be the one that gets chosen over the Victory 1, usually because the Victory 1 wants to be up close and personal, like I said, and that means that it also gets shot back with black dice, whereas the Victory 2 tends to, at least in the early days, was a little bit more desirable because it had more consistent dice. The blue dice in this arc could be fired, at more targets and at longer range. So the Victory 2 was more commonly taken when you wanted to maximize the number of dice you could throw and not be pigeonholed into, I can only really bring all my guns to bear on somebody who's right in my front arc, which it rarely happened. You didn't always get everybody in your front arc. Victory 2 kind of helps make up for that. The Victory 2 is, both versions have seen a lot of upgrades that have helped them over the years. The Victory 2, I think most widely benefited from disposable capacitors, which is a one-turn effect that can extend the blue dice out to long range, and all of a sudden now you have 6 dice you're rolling at long ranges, and the Victory 2 was a really, really nice platform for that, especially since that upgrade couldn't go on large ships. And so the Victory 2 has benefited many times from being or both Victories have, but the Victory 2 specifically has benefited from being a medium ship and not being a large ship. Also great blue crit delivery platform. So that's really just a good option for the Victory 2. And since both of them have weapons teams, this one makes a great gunnery team platform, as well as the Vic 1 making a great ordnance team platform. So we got 5 titles that are available. Only 3 were available in the first wave. So we're going to talk about those ones on top first, and the bottom 2 came much later in the lifespan of Star Wars Armada. We're going to start off with the Corruptor. It's our cheapest title at 5 points. It says the speed of each squadron with bomber you activate is increased by 1 until the end of its activation. Of course, this is only triggered when you do a squadron command. And so this is nice. The bombers for the Empire aren't particularly slow, especially when you look at things like TIE Defenders, but TIE bombers could certainly always use a little bit of a boost, especially when you're trying to get them in position. And of course, this can potentially stack with other things that impact speed. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to look at a build for each of these to kind of help maximize them a little bit. So there you go. Corruptor is going to boost the speed of your bombers a little bit for 5 points. And since the Victory does have a decent squadron value and it has some upgrades that are going to work well with squadrons, Victories both versions tend to make good carriers and good bomber delivery platforms. So Corruptor is actually a fairly decent title. Warlord is coming up next at 8 points. It's a pretty expensive title. It says, while attacking, you may change a die with an accuracy icon into a hit icon. Now, this might be a little counterintuitive because a lot of people generally tend to want to find upgrades that are going to manufacture accuracies instead of hits, because you're a lot more likely to roll a hit than an accuracy. But the Warlord takes that and plays it in reverse. The cool thing about this is that this is while attacking, so this can be any attack. The cool thing about Warlord is it also works on squadron attacks, and I think that's one of the things that gives Warlord its biggest payload, is if you try to maximize your anti-squadron attacks, because every die you throw is an attack. And so, when you're doing, or every squadron you're attacking in a anti-squadron attack is an attack, and you can potentially roll this on all of those. Since the Victory has only 1 die, in those events where you roll an accuracy that would normally be a complete wash, you now get to change that into a hit, which is going to be very useful against squadrons. So that is certainly an option. But then again, there's always those times where you get too many accuracies, so Warlord can be useful for attacking ships as well. Coming up to 12 points, one of the most expensive titles in all of history. It's the Dominator. And I get that it's expensive, but it's a cool title. Still, that price makes it hard to pay. What it does is, while attacking at close to medium range, you may spend up to 2 shields from any of your hull zones to add that number of blue dice to your attack pool. So, 12 points is expensive, and you're going to lose, and you're also paying shields to fuel this thing. And you also can't do it at long range. And so Dominator is a seldom taken title because of its extreme costs in trying to get some extra dice. Especially when you compare it, when you look at how many other options are out there that can also give you more dice. At a certain point, the Dominator is like, maybe it's, maybe it's a little too expensive. But on the other side of the coin, those 2 dice can stack with all those other new things that are giving you extra dice. So it's like, any kind of modifications or enhancements you're running that are going to, spinal armament, things like that are going to increase your front dice. If you happen to get close to medium range, you can now also do this. A cool thing about Dominator is that if you take it on the VIC-1, it's the only way, it's one of the only ways that you can get blue dice on the VIC-1, allowing you to actually have some accuracies. So Dominator can now manufacture some accuracies into a ship that might have had you at range 1, but now couldn't get the accuracy to lock down the brace for all those black crits you rolled. Dominator is a thing to consider maybe when doing something like that. But then again, very expensive still, and you're spending shields, and you can only do it so many times, because once you start running out of shields, then but then again, you might be dead by then, because you kind of have to be at close to medium. The 7th Fleet Star Destroyer is a title that came out with Thrawn and the Chimera. It was a way to outfit some of your other Star Destroyers to all work together. It's got the Arabesh symbol for Star Destroyer down there, or I believe it's like ST or something, or SD for Star Destroyer, but it's any Star Destroyer only. So this is a title that will show up in other breakdowns as well. So it can go on a Victory Star Destroyer, because both versions are considered a Star Destroyer. It says, while defending against an attack that targets your front hull zone before you suffer damage, you may choose and exhaust a copy of this card on another friendly ship at distance 1 to 4 to reduce the total damage by 1. It's a 5-point title. It's basically semi-consistent damage reduction that you can do every turn. It only really works if you have at least 2 of them. Typically, you want to run them in at least 2, if not 3. They can go on Imperial Star Destroyers, they can go on Gladiator Star Destroyers, they can go on Victories, and you can even put them on the Onager, the Star Destroyer version of that, because not both versions of the Onager are Star Destroyers. But that's it's pretty self-explanatory. It just helps reduce damage a little bit. It's all right. It's all right. It also, but I will point out that 7th Fleet is also Imperial only, so you can't put that on a Venator Star Destroyer for the Republic or anything like that. Although maybe they'll come up with something like that eventually. And we have, last but certainly not least, it's the Harrow. My personal favorite title for the Victories. I think it's probably the most popular title overall, in that this was made later in the game. It came out, sometimes the campaigns will come out and they bring out new titles, and our last campaign box brought us this amazing title. At only 3 points, it makes it the cheapest title for the Victory, but also gives us, in my opinion, the most, because it also addresses some key limitations that the Victory had. First off, it lets you gain a support team icon in your upgrade bar. Support team is a very, very useful option to have. Most notably deficient in the Victory because of its low maneuverability. You didn't have engine techs available to the Victory, so that was one of the main things. Again, it's not the only thing you can do with Harrow, but it's probably the most common thing that's done with Harrow, is to give it that engine tech's ability. But it also says, when you execute a speed 1 maneuver during your determined course step, you may change your first yaw value to 2 until the end of your activation. So So when you are doing this Harrow move, you get to change that first speed yaw to 2 if you're doing a 1 speed. Again, it also makes it factor in perfectly with engine techs because that's another speed 1 maneuver. So it gives you a ton of turning power and the option to kind of extend your speed up to 3 if you're at speed 2. You have a nav to trigger engine techs. So it fixes 2 major drawbacks of the Victory Star Destroyer. And I absolutely love it because it becomes very, very fun to do that. Looking at some builds, for a 7th Fleet Star Destroyer, we have the Victory 1 here. This is just kind of if you're running multiple victories in the early days, or if you wanted this to be a support, you could run just the 7th Fleet. But if you maybe wanted it to be supported by other victories, or you could put Minister Tua on there to make up for the fact that there's no defensive retrofit and put ECM on there to help you stay alive a little bit more. So this is just one kind of sample option. Another option would be to run no other upgrades and just 7th Fleet to help support maybe an Imperial Star Destroyer that happens to also be running 7th Fleet. If you're going to be running this as a carrier, Corruptor is definitely a nice option. What I like to do is I like to put Admiral Chirano over here. It's one of my favorite combinations to run with Corruptor. What Chirano is going to do is when you do a squadron command, again, things that trigger off of squadron commands all can trigger at the same time. So, we got a lot of different things going on here. Chirano is going to set your printed speed value to 2 if you're engaged. So he allows you to take the idea here is that I've got a couple of bombers, TIE bombers with the Victory Star Destroyer, and I'm trying to get them to bomb my enemy ship. Oh, but you flew an A-wing in the middle of them. Okay, no problem. Chirano's on board. Boom. Now we can move away, even if we're engaged, and as though we had a printed value of 2. All right, well, that's going to stack with Corruptor because if I got my bombers, now I can increase their speed by 1. So if Chirano says printed value of 2, and then Corruptor says, oh, a +1 on top of that, that's going to let me actually move those bombers away at speed 3, which may very well be close enough to hit enemy ships. We also have flight controllers on this one as well, so it might not happen at the same time, but it gives us versatility. Hey, flight controllers when you're, again, triggers off of squadron command. So in case we don't have to activate bombers, maybe we have to activate somebody else, we can still move them away, or we can hit other ships and then move away. Expanded hangar bay is going to increase that squadron value to up to 4. Because Chirano is so expensive, when I am doing a lot of stuff that triggers all off of squadron commands, I want to maximize value off of both Corruptor and Chirano and even flight controllers. So being able to hit 4 squadrons or 5 if I have a token is going to make all of that work together a little bit better. For Warlord, in the early days of Armada, H9 and Warlord were a powerful combination because when you were doing a squadron attack, H9 is one of those that's going to let you manufacture a accuracy, and Warlord is going to let you manufacture a hit. And when you're rolling a blue die, there was no way that you could get a blank. So basically, any blue die would guarantee to be a hit. And so that would work really well. So basically, when you would do an anti-squadron attack, every squadron, you'd just be like, all right, so they all just take 1 damage. I don't even have to roll because it's impossible for me not to get a hit on them with this combination. This also does work against squadron or against anti-ship attacks as well. And H9s is always good anyway. But couple that with quad laser turrets and Agent Callus, if a squadron wants to attack you, you're going to get counter 1, boom, automatic 1 damage back, right? And then if it's unique, then we get to roll even more. Then we actually have to roll it with Callus because it's a minimum of 1, but we have a higher ceiling there. So some really nasty anti-squadron tactics with Warlord on this particular build. For the Dominator, we're going to just try to really maximize. This is kind of like the ludicrous, or an example of a potential ludicrous build here. We've got Gunnery Team. We're going to be doing Concentrate Fire. We're going to be spending our shields with Dominator, trying to put as much damage out there. I put disposable capacitors on this one, so this way I can hit you at long range, and then when we're closer, then I can hit you with Dominator. So this way I've got something special at every range. Disposable capacitors will pop. I'll be able to get all 3 of my blue dice extended out to long range. With Gunnery Team, Concentrate Fire, now all of a sudden I've got 3 red, 3 blue, and another one of my choosing. Quad battery turrets here for another blue, which, because you're probably going faster than me if I'm a Vic. And then I've got heavy ion emplacements here to do that nasty crit to drain your shields, front and side, or wherever I'm shooting you, both adjacent sides also. So all the rest of that damage goes through to hull, hopefully. And again, Dominator is going to add even more blue dice to the pool once we get closer. So it's just a ridiculous amount of dice from a Victory Star Destroyer. So this is just kind of a fun way to run Dominator. And then Harrow, this is one of my favorite builds, or at least kind of favorite types of builds. Again, expanded launchers is an option here. You don't have to go with that. It's very, very, very expensive. It's one of the most expensive upgrades you'll ever see. And so you can easily go with like a cheap 5-point black crit option instead. But here's Harrow is going to give us engine techs. We kind of talked about that a little bit more. I always run Harrow on a black die Star Destroyer because it does allow me to get the black die Star Destroyer always has a problem with the Vic 1 of it doesn't get close enough to do what it needs to do with those black dice. And so Harrow is going to let us do that. In addition to that, I've got Admiral Ozzel, who's going to let me do a speed 1 maneuver at the beginning of the first turn. And then I also, because it's a speed 1 maneuver, it impacts off of Harrow. Now I get to do a 2-yaw turn off of that speed 1 maneuver, so I really get a lot of flexibility there. We have expanded launchers, XI7, and Ordnance Experts. So Ordnance Experts is going to give me black dice rerolls. XI7 is going to say you can't redirect more than 1, and then expanded launcher is going to throw 2 extra black dice in my front arc. The reason I want it all in my front arc here is because with engine techs, Harrow and Ozzel, I have a much better chance of being able to navigate my way and quickly to be able to get close to my target, and hopefully they'll be in my front arc because that all that extra maneuverability is going to almost guarantee that. And that's why I think it's worth risking. There's not too many ships that I would put expanded launchers on, but I think a victory 1 with Harrow is definitely an option, and that's kind of why I went with XI7. I'm hoping to just overwhelm you with dice rather than count on that 1 crit to show up. I'd rather just have maximum damage because this is potentially 4 extra damage, so that is pretty cool. So that's all the builds, and that's my kind of quick breakdown of the Victory class Star Destroyer. It's come a long way during its time in the game, and I think it's still worth a second look. I think you can even run 2 victories in one build, although I don't think there's too many triple Vic builds. There used to be a lot of Tarkin triple Vics with a lot of squadrons too. But let me know what you guys think of the Victory, how you like to run it, and again, if you haven't already joined the Discord, check out the links in the video description below. Big thanks to my patrons. You guys are absolutely amazing. Look for more breakdowns coming soon, and as always, don't wear hats that are more than 1 foot tall because they'll fall off when you walk through doorways.